All of that and more with my man. Let's do it. Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan joining us now. Dan, happy Monday. How you doing today?
Happy New Year, J-Rock. You are a gamer, I will say that. I got to say, though, that even though I'm sorry that you had the orbital fracture there, that sounds awful. But I do think you owe me and your other listeners, a selfie on the Facebook page. Just so we can sympathize with you.
I took I could.
Let's just let the record show that I'm calling for a selfie right now from you on Facebook.
I took a video.
And, we'll see how that works.
I took a video over the weekend. As soon as I came home, man, I did not realize. I'm telling you, it looks worse than it feels. It looks a million times. Look, I've gotten hurt for real. This is nothing to me. People look at it and they go, oh, and I'm like, I don't even feel this. This is nothing. I do feel it today. I didn't feel it when it happened is what I should say. I definitely feel it today. But anyways, it looks just a million times worse than it is. But I did a video. My eye, it was swollen shut. I'm sitting there like Popeye with one eye open and one eye closed. And but you're right. I do need to selfie that up today here, man, because it's gotten all kinds of shades of purple and stuff. It's underneath it now and stuff. I'm telling you, man.
You get a lot more sympathy if you put a photo up on Facebook.
You know what? That's a good point.
That's not what you're looking for, I know.
That's part of it, absolutely, man. And plus the mystery's out there. Now people are like, hey, man, maybe his eye's hanging down. Maybe somebody's visualizing right now the eye hanging by the visceral stuff there, or whatever you want to call it. And anyways, but yeah, I'm a gamer, brother. You got it. You remember that, Dan Wismar. That's right. But anyways, how you doing, man? How was your weekend, man? How was things for you? You weren't getting your orbital bone fractured, but what were you having a good weekend? Watching some football? There's a lot of football.
Oh yeah, real nice weekend. I tell you one thing that I really felt as soon as the NFL game started, and I guess the problem was having the Panthers Cardinals game be the lead game. After being so jacked up about the semifinals in the college football world, we settle in on Saturday and we get the Panthers and the Cardinals, and I'm yawning. I'm trying to stay awake and thinking, man, this NFL thing just completely lacks the drama of college football. And it was striking to me the difference in just excitement level, between that and the sort of plodding, slow motion exhibition of football that the Cardinals and the Panthers were putting us through. It was just something that jumped out at me about the difference between the two sports.
Oh, absolutely, man. And I'll tell you what, man. You know what? Before we get into anything, before we go Buckeyes or any of that, I'm taking your selfie, by the way, as we talk here. So the next time that you go on an extended talk here, I'm going to be posting this as we go. But and I'm sitting here trying to line it up, and then you stop talking. I'm like, well, you asked for a selfie, and now you're just going to turn the mic back over to me. But I did want to ask you about the thing with Marv Lewis. And, I know, again, Browns fans want to go the wrong way with this. I don't care about the Bengals and the Browns and all that, but I think there's that line, as I say, that grass is greener thing. And it amazes me that San Francisco went through what they did with a successful coach who just was having a little bit of a patch there. And obviously you had philosophical difference of Lewis conversation. He lost in the playoff. Well, he also got them there again. And he's, say what you will about him, calling Johnny a midget and whatever, but he's a good coach. I've always had respect for Marv, but here they go. I always think, man, what a risky thing. I mentioned Chicago. They had stability. Whether they got tired of it, they said, okay, let's go with something new. But I think they got culture shock from what something new is when it's like a rookie or it's not that organized regime that you're used to. And that's what you run the risk of when you run a guy like Marv Lewis out because he's not winning enough. And I get it that at some point that does become an issue, and maybe they're there. We're not even close to that. But, hey, what are your thoughts on that thought process?
Well, I think, sure, when you make a change in the NFL and make a change anywhere, whether it's a baseball manager or a coach anywhere, you've got to be convinced before you pull the trigger that what you're getting is going to be an improvement.
Yes.
Something new is not necessarily something better, and you've always got to look around and make sure that you can never make sure, especially if you're going with an untested guy rather than a veteran, proven guy. But So I heard somebody say that the Bengals, well, at least they're consistent. Well, consistent in the fact that they get to the playoffs and always lose. That is, Dalton's legacy, and certainly it's Marvin Lewis's legacy. The irony there, I think, is that the Bengals were one of the most inconsistent teams this year. I wasn't the first to use the Jekyll and Hyde comparison with the Bengals. I mean, they looked like crap on a Thursday night, getting drilled by the Cleveland Browns, and then they'll turn around the next week and beat somebody else up and look great doing it. Prior to that, they had got shut out by the Indianapolis Colts in a game where they just looked miserable. A couple weeks later, they're early in the season at 3-0. They were being touted as the best team in the NFL. So they were really, really up and down. They were anything but consistent over the course of the season. The only thing consistent about them is their playoff record. I am agnostic about Marvin Lewis as far as whether I care one way or another whether he stays or goes. But the other issue there that I see my Bengals fans, friends on Twitter talking about yesterday during and after the game was that you can't get a first-rate coach to come into Cincinnati and work for Mike Brown, because the perils of working for Mike Brown are well known around the league, and that he's a hands-on, kind of an owner, and he's tight with a buck, and he, is going to cause any coach, a problem, and it's hard for them to get, experienced, proven coaches to come in and work there in Cincinnati. So to the degree that that's true or not true, I'm not entirely sure, but that sure is the sentiment that I hear from Bengals fans and from people around the league that are, observe the situation over the long haul.
For sure, and we're not there, and I get it, and I totally, like I say, hey, man, I'll probably be right there with you having that argument about Browns coaches the minute that they continually get us knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. Like, you get to year 3, 4, 5 of that, okay, maybe we go, yeah, let's move to something else, but we're not there yet. But I just think that I always, like you said, you got to have that conversation with yourself before you do that. Is what we're going to get better? Because if you have something, like if you got a guy, like I could see if, and I'm just throwing this name out there, not because he's good for the job, I'm just throwing a name out there. Let's say you get Gruden. Say Chucky says, hey, I'm interested in coaching Cincinnati, and you think this is the guy that I want. Now you have a plan, and now there's a reason to replace Marvin Lewis, but you don't just knee-jerk and go, all right, Marv's got to go because he can't win. Now let's go find somebody else, because now that's the Cleveland Browns. You can jokingly say that's their strategy a lot of the times. It's thought through, and now you find yourself twisting in the wind because you didn't have the replacement ready. And if you don't, then why? Just wait and do it right. And I think that's the risk too. And I think that, that may be part of it. Each year, Cincinnati measures it, they think about it, and they go, you know what? Dance with who brung you, the old expression goes, and they decide not to make that change. But yeah, the last thing you want as a fan base is for that organization to just go, cut off their nose to spite their face as much as you.
Yeah, and I think that maybe you could say that between the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals, there's most people would probably say that there's more talent on the Bengals roster. But let's face it, that the Browns and the Bengals are in exactly the same situation with regard to the quarterback position, where they're all coming to the realization, and of course ours has been a long-term realization, that we don't have a good enough guy at that position to take us where we want to be. And that certainly is what has been dawning for the last several years, and with an exclamation point last year and more so this year, that Andy Dalton is not the guy, and that Andy Dalton isn't a good enough quarterback to get you there and to win playoff games. And so in that regard, they're no better off than the Cleveland Browns right now, because we both have that void at the most important position on the field.
Absolutely. And I saw some people say, oh, well, what's Cincinnati supposed to do? It amazes me how many fans don't understand Andy Dalton's contract, by the way. The Cincinnati Bengals are not locked into this long-term $100 million contract. That's the grand total of things. But I believe, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's a small amount. It's 2 years that they're on the hook for here, and it's maybe like $24 million or something like that. It's a very reasonable amount. They are not. Now, they will be reaching a point soon, though, where they have to commit to the rest of that contract. And so you will have to make a decision. And I don't think the Bengals, and who are we? We haven't seen a franchise quarterback in forever. But I don't know how the Bengals can be sure at that point that's that guy, because then you will be committing that future salary cap space and all of that money to that guy, because he continues to show you, but again, how many of those guys are there in the NFL? How many of the quarterbacks win by themselves in today's NFL? And how many are in the Andy Dalton category, the Brian Hoyer category, the give us a decent team and we can win some games with them category? Because that's most NFL quarterbacks.
I think you're right, and I saw someone speculating the other day that how many NFL teams do you think there are that are 100% satisfied with their quarterback situation? And I think it would be probably in single digits.
Yeah,
at the very most, 10 to 12.
Yeah.
You got to think is probably the high end estimate of that. And so, we've got a lot of company in that regard because obviously the franchise quarterbacks are few and far between. We see them in the upcoming 8 games. The Lucks and Mannings and Rodgers and Romos and Flaccos and Brady's. That's the group, and they're all in the group of final 8.
Yeah,
and it's not
think
a
about
coincidence.
that. They're all there. And then, so those are the teams that found those quarterbacks. And whoever's the next team to find one of those guys will join that group. You know what I mean? Like, they have their guys.
Yeah, the team that most recently joined that group is the Seattle Seahawks and Russell Wilson. And I guess you could say, even though his career has been a little bit spotty, Cam Newton also in that group of 8. I mentioned 6 quarterbacks, and the only 2 I left out were Russell Wilson and Cam Newton, and they're
Wilson's that guy.
On the verge of being in that group.
For sure. Wilson, I think, is there. I mean, I know the sample size. I get what you're saying, but I am totally all in on him. I believe he's legit as can be. And Cam Newton, man, I mean, he is definitely come along in his, and I was never a big, because of the Scam Newton and all of that, I was not a big Cam Newton guy either, but he's got toughness, as he showed. He's physically tough, and he's shown some maturation in his game anyway. But yeah, you're right. The playoffs are the perfect example of that, and literally everybody else, the other 20, 22, 24, however, whatever number you want to give, are all looking to upgrade that position no matter what they've got. And it shows itself in the teams that are left.
Yeah, that's true, and I didn't even realize it until I started sort of rattling them off, and I had the names of the 8 remaining teams left there, and I started rattling off maybe the 6 or 7 franchise quarterbacks in this league, and they're all among those 8 teams. It was kind of surprising myself as I was rattling them off.
I mean, the best one that's not in that grouping, obviously you've got Roethlisberger, who was just knocked out. And even then, you're looking at the guys who were knocked out, perhaps, or whatnot. That next group there, obviously, a Breeze. There's, look at them. I mean, there's very limited. So, and that's Cincinnati's problem, but I just thought some of that correlates back to here. And another thing that I'm going to just mention before we talk Buckeyes is we're not talking for the first time in 2 years about upheaval, franchise changes. We're not looking for coaches, at least, seriously. I'm not going to say that's progress, but that's a good thing. That's at least a situation that we don't have to sit here and beat our head up against the wall with. You know what? Didn't even mean to plug this in there, but it's the perfect segue. Talking about that, last year, remember, we're looking for coach in Buffalo, and Marone's name came up all over the place here. You see what happened with him. He was able to get that out clause where if the team got sold, he could opt out. He took advantage of that here, as he's now going to find himself in demand. But I found interesting the story. I don't know if you heard it over the weekend, that one of the riffs and one of the things that made him antsy about staying in that situation was the trade with the Browns, where they traded the first round. Varying reports, and we know how this is because somebody says that they tackled Jerry Jones to stop him from drafting Manziel. Somebody says that Jimmy sent a guy on a sprint to go draft Manziel. So who knows about these draft day stories, but the word out of Buffalo is you could vary the reaction from stormed out of the room to made his dissatisfaction known to the room. But either way, apparently Marone was not on board with trading a first-round pick for Sammy Watkins.
I guess I'm not surprised to hear that. And Marone, I saw his name already linked with the Jets.
The Jets,
and some other teams.